Yo, what's going on? This is For the Culture podcast. I am your host, Tay Jordan, here with episode 2. I have a very, very special guest here joined with me today. Well, joined with me remotely, I should say. Ms. Shaina Wiel. She is a sports business professional with over a decade of experience. She's worked with the likes of ESPN, the Brooklyn Nets, with experience in branding, sponsorships. I'm really excited to have her as a guest here today. But most of all, what Shaina has created a very influential and impactful organization, Minorities in Sports. It started off as a group chat, which has since blossomed today with over 750 members, possibly may be over 1,000 members at this point. Multiple college chapters. It's essentially a networking digital hub. Over 80% of its members, its job-seeking members, has secured employment or been invited to interviews. With that being said, she's sort of, the organization is what we would call the plug for real. With no further ado, Ms. Shaina Wiel, welcome to For the Culture podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for joining us. So I'm in DC. Obviously, this is weird times. It's May 2020. We are quarantined. But, I still go for my runs and everything. But I feel like New York, I know you're in New York, that's a little something different. Do you even risk it? Do you go outside? What's it like for you right now?
I honestly just go to the supermarket and to walk my dog, and that's it. So I'm not I haven't left Harlem since March 6th. So I'm pretty much just in the house, not going anywhere.
Yeah, wow. This is just weird times. Who even saw this coming? It has just put changed lives for us all over town. So tell me a little bit about your background. What got you into sports? What inspired a career in sports? And of course, we got to get into minorities in sports. But first, just give us a background of Shaina's background.
Yeah, so I actually started in sports, as you said, about 12 years ago now. I wanted to be a sports psychiatrist at first, and then I realized I wasn't trying to be in school that long. So I decided to, explore other avenues. So I ended up taking an internship at a sports agency out in Chicago. And that was pretty much the beginning of my sports journey. So, I've been doing it ever since. I've really found an interest in marketing and sales and sponsorship. So I kind of just stuck with that over the years. But yeah, that's pretty much it.
Okay, cool. How was your experience over at the sports agency?
It was cool. I mean, I was an intern, so that was my first professional experience within the sports space. And, coming out of college at, I think I was 22, 23 at the time, it was amazing. The agent that I interned for was one of the top 5 agents in the country.
Wow.
So, to have that experience, I felt really lucky and blessed to be able to have that experience. But it was just your normal run-of-the-mill internship. And just for most people who start in sports, that first job, I wasn't going anywhere special. I wasn't doing anything crazy at the time. But just to be able to be in that space and learn directly from one of the heavy hitters in the industry was pretty cool.
Yeah, that sounds interesting. I'm sure that had to be a heck of an experience for sure. So I know you live in New York currently. Is that where you're from? Are you from Uptown?
I am not from Uptown. I'm from Queens.
Okay.
But yeah, I am from New York, born and raised in Queens, and moved out here to Harlem when I started grad school at Columbia. And I was also working at ESPN. So at the time, so that's what made me move to the city.
Nice. I actually didn't live too far from Queens. I lived in East New York.
Okay.
So, I was in Queens quite a bit. I actually miss New York.
Girl, what's going on over here? You good?
Yeah, at least not right now. Right. But okay, so tell me about this phenomenal organization. You're just doing great things and creating such a great networking opportunity and tool for those that aspire to be in the business or getting into the business. Tell me a little bit about Minorities in Sports as an organization.
It started about 4 years ago as a group chat. I was in another group chat, and a lot of the conversations were going over to sports. So I just like started a sports group chat so we could stop like cannibalizing the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And then through that, I started adding like a few of my colleagues and friends that I started out in the sports industry with. So some who worked with me at ESPN, a few others, like some college friends who worked in sports. But most of us were like really just kind of beginning our career and getting in the niche of things. So through that, the group chat actually just kept growing, and it grew very quickly, over the 4 years to now. I think in the actual group chat, we have over 800 people,
Wow.
and the network overall, about or a little over 1,000.
Wow, that's amazing and steady growing. You're just doing great
Mhm.
things over there. What did it start at in terms of what's the goal behind minority in sports?
Yeah, it's interesting because I didn't start it as like to be this revolutionary, you know, Black safe space. Like I started to be able to stay connected to my friends,
Mm-hmm.
a space where we could help each other out, just like our white counterparts did. Um, and to also have a safe space. And it's pretty much what the group's mission has turned into,
Mm-hmm.
is to have just like to pretty much be a large ERG, so a large employee resource group, if you will, just of the whole industry, where people could connect, be the plug for the next person, because a lot of us don't have dads who play golf with the president of a league. So, to be that resource and to also be that safe space, which to me is probably the most important part of the group chat.
Mm-hmm.
Is to be able to have a space where people feel comfortable to be able to talk and discuss and really give an honest view about what their experience is like in the industry.
That's important, for sure, for sure. So from your experience, obviously we know with these big corporate entities, it's not many people of color. But even in terms of being what some would call a double minority, with being both a female and also being a Black woman,
Right.
um, do you feel as though, tell us a little bit as far as your journey, do you feel as though your experience has been like a double difficulty? If you could just enlighten us a bit about what your experience in this male-dominated industry, such as sports, the sports business particularly, what has that been like?
Yeah, the interesting point is I haven't really experienced too much from a gender side. I think for the most part, like you're always going to get those people who kind of come for you and check your sports knowledge. For that, I saw that more outside of the industry.
Mm.
Just random dudes learning that I work in sports and then wanting to kind of question my sports knowledge,
That's
or like,
Facebook analyst, huh?
I call them the barbershop analysts, those who all of a sudden turn into like a Stephen A. Smith in the barbershop, and then
Right.
they just be so loud and wrong. Um, I think in the workplace, it was pretty much, and I wouldn't even just say this from a sports perspective. I think this is just something across industries. There's just a lot of implicit bias that I saw or have experienced, and definitely a lot of microaggressions.
Mm.
Uh, so definitely nothing for the most part like super overt, but definitely a lot of making you kind of question why you're there, your intelligence, and things like that.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes sense. So, So you went to Columbia. I went to Ohio University for undergrad. So, we're not new to
Oh, Penn State for undergrad, Columbia
Oh,
for grad.
okay, yeah. Sorry about that. So Penn State.
Oh,
Okay, jump and turn up. So
yeah,
you're not no stranger to PWIs, predominantly white institutions.
not at all.
So with that being said, and coming from your background, coming from inner city New York City, what do you feel as though there's this concept? Obviously, we've probably all been heard of the concept of code switching.
Right.
Do you feel as though it's a real thing, and do you think that minorities trying to get into, and not just sports, it could be any business, the more we try to, elevate, do you feel as though it's a real pressure? And have you ever felt pressured to do this concept of code switching, whatever that is?
Not at school, especially not at undergrad. Penn State has a lot of Black students.
Mm-hmm.
It's just such a big school. So, the amount of Black students that we had was monumental. I mean, it's still like obviously way more white students than Black
Right.
students. We were able to have like our little, our little community.
Okay.
So,
are you Greek?
No, I'm not Greek.
Okay.
But I think also because I was so young too in undergrad, I didn't really feel the need to code switch. I was just like, y'all gonna get what y'all get. Like,
amen.
It is what it is. Like, I'm a Black girl. I'm a Black West Indian girl from New York. Like,
Facts.
That's what y'all gonna get in central Pennsylvania. Grad school was a little bit different because I was working full time at the time. And the program that I was in was basically like a professional program. So you needed to be working full time in order to in the program. So I think there was a little bit more of a code switch, definitely because I was working at ESPN at the time too, and ESPN is a little bit more conservative. So definitely, and being the only Black person on my team, you have to make sure that you fit in, and that, people are comfortable. And it sucks that those are things that we had to think about, but, it's definitely things that
it's a reality, right?
Reality that all of us deal with.
So you touched a little bit about, implicit biases and microaggressions in the workplace, obviously not being strangers to corporate America. What do you think us as Black people can do to, you never want to be seen as the angry Black woman or anything like that, but to combat, or I should say maybe speak up when it's necessary to speak up? How do you combat those things in the workplace?
Yeah, I think it definitely took me a long time to figure this out. And this is something that I'm still working on. But I think one of the biggest things is to make sure you have your argument down pat and your stats together. So like, if somebody is questioning your intelligence or questioning your work, like being able to back it up. So being able to back up what you say, not putting emotion into it. So I'm somebody who, again, like I'm a West Indian girl from New York. Like that stereotype alone is like very aggressive, very emotional, very loud. So, being able to check that and know that you're coming from, a place that, like standing, excuse my language, but standing your shit. You know what I mean? So it's like, if someone is questioning something that you're doing, but you did it right, like being able to back that up. Like, this is why I did this, point X, Y, and Z. So.
Gotcha. It's interesting. So with that being said, we are obviously aware of the stereotypes coming into it. Do you feel as though we have to be cognizant of, how we're going to be perceived? Or do you just think that, like, I'm gonna have this take it or leave it attitude, what you see is what you get? Do you feel as though we sometimes, when we try to get ahead professionally, that every Black person is going to come at a point in time where they have to make a decision in their professional life is, am I going to swallow some of myself, lose some of myself, bite my tongue to, live to fight another day? Do I got to pick and choose my battles? What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I definitely think it's more of a pick and choose your battle, because we all know the reality of the situation. And as much as I would love to say, like, can I curse on here?
Oh yeah, just do your thing. This is for the culture, girl.
I was like, as much as I would like to say, just fuck it, be yourself and take it or leave it. Like, y'all gonna get who you're gonna get. At the end of the day, like, stuff like that can hinder you moving ahead, especially if you're in a more traditional company that's, been around for a longer time, and the powers that be are a little bit more on the traditional side. So I think it's more of like a choose your battles, read the room, and more so, get your inner Joanne the scammer and learn how to play the game. So it's like, if you are in a space that that you can 100% be yourself and stand in that, absolutely do it. If you're in a more traditional space, like, you gotta learn how to play the game.
That's a
and
fact.
continue to move and until you're in a position where you can change the game.
Hashtag learn how to play the game. That is important. That's real. So as a Black woman, we know how important our hair is. Let's talk about hair, our ethnic hair in the workplace. Do you ever feel the need to like, because I remember when I was going out for a job for ESPN and it was an anchor that I really looked up to, a Black anchor, and she kind of like made me just feel so bad. She was like, because I don't get me wrong, I'm dark skinned. I sometimes I rock a short haircut, and she told me I need to consider getting a weave. Now, don't get me wrong, I wear weave sometimes, but like, don't tell me to wear weave. You know what I'm saying? Do you feel as though as a Black woman,
like who that is? Because there was only but so many Black female anchors at ESPN. You might have to tell me on the side.
I got you.
I mean, I personally am at the point where I don't care anymore. Like but I'm also 12 years in the game, so and it's also illegal now. So, but I got to a point where I was just like, I'm not about to be wasting time and money on getting my hair straightened or doing a blowout just for a hour-long interview. And when I'm gonna wear my hair curly at work anyway, what I mean? So it's like, to me, unless I already have my hair straight because I feel like having it straight, or unless I am have my hair a certain way, I'm gonna wear my hair however I have it. So I've definitely gone on interviews like maybe a few days before I went on vacation, and I went to the interview with twists in my hair. Like, I'm not about to take out these twists just to come in for this interview, and then, or like, I just got back from a vacation, and whatever the case may be, like, I'm not about to take out twists just for this.
Did you feel like your white peers, your colleagues received you differently that day, like, or took notice, or maybe even said a snarky comment or something?
Yeah, not anymore. Definitely earlier on in my career, definitely one of the companies that I've worked at in the beginning, we won't name them, but definitely had comments when I had come in with braids, like, my white counterparts asking me, how do you wash that? Do you wash it with like
straight like that?
Yeah, like, why does it look plastic? Because like, especially back in the days, the braids used to look real shiny. Before we started getting the kinky texture and all that, like, so that old school connector line used to look real shiny sometimes when you got them braids. But being asked, like, kind of looks like plastic. Why does it look like that? Or
the audacity.
You wash that with bar soap. Different questions like that. Or definitely, like, if I straighten my hair, because they don't understand shrinkage. So it's like, oh yeah, my hair is actually really long in real life, and it's all fine. And being like, oh, how did you get your hair like that? How does it straight? Like, why is it so long? Is that a weave? Things like that.
They be bold, though. Audacity, like that. People was audacious way before Trump, obviously. Like, people just say
absolutely.
anything.
Now I don't get it as much. I think everybody is pretty much aware of those kinds of instances. So I mean, like, I've been working for myself since August, but even at my last company, like, if I came in with straight hair, it wasn't like, wow, oh my God, look at your hair. It would just be like any other comment. If my hair was anything other than curly, because I wore my hair curly most of the time, like 90% of the time that I was there. So obviously any other hairstyle, it would be like, oh, this is cute. Like, this is a new look for you. So it wasn't bad. It was just like normal that like anyone would get. So
I just want to highlight, you've been working for yourself the past few years. Hashtag ownership.
Well, since August, not,
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, it's cool, but I live in New York, so I won't get excited about that until I am at a space where I have disposable income. So
you're on your way. It's the fact that you took the steps, it's coming.
Yeah.
It's coming. So let me ask you, in terms of, but going back to the workplace, do you feel as though it's essential to have allies for us as a people to have allies to get ahead, that people that don't look like us, because it's one thing for us to galvanize together on a unified front and try to make change, but how important is it to have people outside of the culture and people that don't look like us that's an ally to help us get ahead as well and make some real change?
It depends though, because it depends on what the motives of that ally is and if they truly understand there's an ally. So I've definitely had, a few coworkers and a few coworkers and classmates who have been really, really awesome allies. And to me, what made them the best ally was the fact that, they realized their privilege. So they were able to use that when needed. They weren't just like, oh, like we're cool and we're on the same.
I see. They gotta be authentic.
Right. And it's not even just authentic, because you have people who are authentic, but they have to be aware. So it's like, I've had a lot of white coworkers that I was super cool with, and we're still friends to this day, but I wouldn't necessarily call them allies, because to me, an ally is someone who recognizes their privilege and then uses their privilege for the greater good. So, who doesn't necessarily see us, like they see us on the same level, but they understand that society doesn't see us on the same level, and they understand that it's not an equal playing field. So, when it comes time to have your back in a situation, they're the ones who speak up to vouch for you when needed. So to me, that is an ally, and I've definitely had like a few of those who were really good, that I'm really still good friends with today. So yeah.
That's good. I know that you said earlier, like the organization didn't even initially start off as what was, anything supposed to be revolutionary or anything like that. But what it's blossomed to, I just think is so essential and important, because I think for one, it acknowledges that, an issue was there. We have a lack of access type of issue. And I think that your organization is so important because it's sort of a conduit or a connector. Getting into the lack of access though, I wanted to get into the business of sport. So when you look at guys, okay, traditionally, like obviously The Last Dance is going on right now, and it's really just making us look into, it's put into perspective of how far sports has come from a business standpoint. When you look at guys like, let's take LeBron James. Obviously, a lot of people are familiar with his business acumen, but more so the people that he's empowered that look like him, that's, in charge of his business affairs. How important is it for athletes in particular to take more of a active instead of a pedestrian approach to their business affairs?
I think the biggest thing, I've heard this early on in my career, is that, once you sign that contract that takes you from amateur to professional, you have to look at yourself as a business and treat yourself as a business. So not necessarily just like, I'm gonna put my homeboys on just to put my homeboys on, but like your circle needs to have a purpose. They need to have experience, which is important, because it's like, yeah, we want to help out the homies, we want to help out everyone, but if your homegirl, your homeboy doesn't know what they're doing, that definitely hinder you in the future. You can end up signing like a really shitty deal, or put yourself in a position that could be detrimental to your career. So I think like really treating yourself as a business, ensuring that everybody in your circle has an active purpose, is learning what they need to learn. And, I don't always subscribe to, we just got to do it all on our own, and because we got it, like, yeah, we got it, but sometimes it's smart to like kind of infiltrate the system a little bit, learn everything, kind of take what you learn and then do your own shit. So just
that's
I think,
real.
and if you think about LeBron too, like, that's pretty much what his team did. They didn't come out the gate like, oh, we know how to be super agents, we know how to.
They learned the game.
They learned the game. Like they, did their internships. They did those first jobs at, major companies or specific companies, and then kind of came out of that knowing the game, learning the game from some of the best, or at least some of the most successful people in the industry, and then took that and then did their own thing.
Right. No, that's real. That's good. All right, so I mean, we in year 2020, and we're still in a year of a lot of first woman this, first black this. So we just recently had the first female coach in the NFL. We just had the Chicago Bulls just hired their first black general manager. So being that it's 2020 and we still haven't, like, when you look at the product on the court in the field, it's predominantly black. The NBA is 78% black, but when it comes to, from coaching positions to leadership, I mean, we'll be secretaries, nothing against secretaries, nothing against HR, nothing like that. But when it comes to, operations.
All right, HR be getting the bag, like.
Right. Like, we tired of being a help.
Don't sleep on HR.
No, of course. HR is the
right. They out here getting the bag.
And they the floodgates. They the gatekeepers.
Right. And the ones who are in charge normally don't look like us, but that's a different story.
Facts. That's true. So, but being that it's 2020 and we still having so many firsts, do you feel as though it shows that things, well, hey, things are changing? Or is it just that, nah, things really ain't changing, we just having a little bit tokens here and there?
I wouldn't say we have tokens. I think things are slowly changing, but there's still a long way to go. So, because I think it also gets really nuanced, because when you think about, certain roles that you see a lot of us in, of course, it's like you're going to see a lot of us in marketing. So I would love to see things kind of shift in some quote unquote non-traditional fields. So start seeing more people who look like us in like those analytic fields, those executive level, because that's another thing too. Like, if you are breaking it down even by age or level at those entry level positions, like we're kind of good. Like, we're getting in the door. But as you get to the higher, more senior positions, you're not seeing people who look like us. So, I would love to see more of us in executive level positions,
right,
senior executives, C-suite level positions, legal.
Facts. No, that's real. And you know what? Not even just getting into the position, but it's like, getting in the position and staying. I feel as though, like, we have zero margin of error. If we mess up one job or we get prematurely fired, 9 times out of 10, I mean, you got so many great coaches that's, did a good job and for whatever reason lost their job. And, their white counterparts get opportunities to coach again or get other jobs. But you got guys like Mark Jackson of the NBA. He's a commentator now, hasn't got another look. So just the margin of error.
On the corporate side too, people who, like you said, prematurely get let go, or, we don't have the opportunity to fuck up like some of our white counterparts do.
Yeah. Yeah, that's real, and it's unfortunate. It's so bad with diversity in terms of these professionals league. You got a league like the NFL. I'm not sure if you're familiar. Are you familiar with the Rooney Rule?
Yeah.
So, what's your thoughts on that? So, for those that's not familiar with the Rooney Rule, it's basically a rule that the NFL put in place that requires teams to interview ethnic minority candidates for a head coaching job. So I don't want to say it's like for show or, for quota, who knows? I mean, I do know that there's 32 football teams and only 7 black head coaches. So they obviously have a diversity issue. Do you feel as though the Rooney Rule, it being implemented, do you think it's effective, and do you think it need to be implemented in other leagues that have diversity issues?
Yeah, I think, I mean, like, when it comes down to it, when you think about the Rooney Rule and all of that, it's just more so like how effective is it? So
Mm-hmm.
it's one thing to get, in the door for an interview. It's another thing to get hired. And like you said, it's another thing to stay on and to stay hired.
Mm-hmm.
So I would love to see like the stats of that, like out of how many Black potential coaches that have been interviewed, how
Got the
many
job.
actually got a job.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and those who have gotten jobs in the past, like since that rule has started, how long on average did they stay in head coaching positions?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's the thing too. It's like, it's more than just like getting people the interview. It's more so like who's actually getting hired. And it's the same on the corporate side. Like the corporate side, a lot of these companies do have quotas that they need to hit,
Mm-hmm.
especially as diversity and inclusion starts to become more of an important issue in these companies. A lot of these HR departments are starting to see quotas that they have to hit from senior leadership. It's like, listen, we need to get this many people of color in the door. We need to get like
Mm-hmm.
this percentage of women in the door, or whoever. But again, like, y'all could be interviewing people all day, but how many people are actually getting hired? How many people are staying in their roles
Mm-hmm.
past a year? How many people are lasting a year? How many people are getting promoted? So once they get in
Mm-hmm.
those roles, are sitting, especially as you get more senior, like, this a Black person gets hired, are they sitting in the director level role for 10
Mm-hmm.
years, as opposed to on average their white counterparts who may be in a director level role for 3 to 4 years and get promoted to senior director or VP.
Mm-hmm.
So
And what's interesting, the numbers just doesn't reflect the accessible and available talent of color. Like, it's not a shortage of talented, intelligent Black individuals that's eligible and more than capable of doing these jobs.
right.
And that's every sector. Okay, switching things up a little bit, I wanted to talk about this whole concept of shut up and dribble. Now, that saying was made famous by Fox commentator Laura Ingraham. I think she was talking about LeBron James when he had criticized
Right.
45.
Mhm.
So, but I mean, that just speaks to a bigger a bigger deal in terms of how a lot of people perceive athletes, and we feel as though they really should be seen and not heard in terms of just go out and perform. Just shut up and dribble. She meant exactly what she said. Can you,
Absolutely.
huh?
I said she absolutely did.
Yeah, so what and that's why I love people like LeBron so much, and just watching this Last Dance and seeing how, not to compare LeBron to Jordan, but you got an athlete that wanted to be more on the outs on a back end and just really shut up and dribble. He was there to play basketball. He made it clear that he's not a politician. He's not about to do that, which he's fine. He's entitled to. Everybody different, but
Yeah, I have thoughts on that too. Like, I will say, one, times were definitely different back then. So it
mm-hmm,
was a little bit harder, especially as an athlete, to be more vocal. We have to remember that social media was,
Ali did it before Jordan came along, though.
yeah, he did, but we have to also remember what Ali went through.
That's facts.
And we also have to remember that as much as people, especially white people, love him now, like, people hated him back then. Like, his whole image had changed since then, and now people remember him as this like amazing activist, and
Mm-hmm.
they revere him. But back then, like when he was going through it, like, people hated him. um
Yeah.
he lost so many opportunities. He lost a lot of money. He lost titles. He lost jobs. Like, that was not an easy thing. So, if you think about the 90s, especially, we're talking about Michael Jordan, and I'm not saying this as like an excuse, but one, the league was just starting to make money then.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't have social media where you could kind of just like create your own brand before,
Mm-hmm.
you know, the league kind of made you a brand, or a big shoe deal made you a brand. So at that time, like, you really did have to adhere to contracts. We got to remember a lot of these contracts have morality clauses in them where it's like, can't talk. I'm not saying that Jordan had this, but a lot of those brand contracts like had that type of stuff in there where it's like you can't talk on certain things. And then like furthermore, this is just my personal opinion. I'm not really looking to athletes to be my social justice hero. Like I was thinking about the Dave Chappelle "Where's Ja" comment. Like I'm not looking at Ja Rule when somebody gets shot by a cop to be like, what are your thoughts? You know what I'm saying? So it's like
that's a good point.
It's cool for
but they're more than an athlete.
And that's my thing is like that should be their decision. And even today, like I don't criticize any athletes who choose to stay quiet because if I was in their position, you know, like a lot of us that are talking don't have as much to lose as some of these dudes do. So like people love to talk about NFL players and them not being vocal and they need to get together and all this. I'm like, we not making the money that they make. We don't have as much to lose as they do. And because I can't imagine what it's like to be making, let's say, $85 million and
it make you reconsider.
especially like in a league like the NFL where your contracts aren't really guaranteed. You know, like if we think about it, Colin Kaepernick, like Colin lost everything.
Yeah, that's a fact.
You know what I'm saying? So, you know, it seems like he did really well in terms of like saving and has been able to reinvent himself. But I'm sure there were more than a couple of times where he was sitting there questioning like, yo, is this shit worth it? Like, you know, because if you think about like the amount of money that he lost, the contract that he lost that he's still fighting for, like, you know, he had to go to court over that shit. That's no joke. So we can't, a lot of us like, you know, who are making a quarter of what these people are making would completely fall apart if our job tomorrow told us like, you know, you can't. So, you know, I don't fault anyone. I think for LeBron, I really do commend him for being vocal and for saying what he believes in. I do think that he's in a little bit of a privileged position because of one, his star power. He is the best player in the league. The league makes a lot of money off of him. So he is in a position to be a little bit more vocal and not have any repercussions against him.
Yeah, he definitely leverages his power for sure.
Right. And exactly. So he is, you know, going back to my ally, like he recognizes his privilege and uses that for the greater good. So I think that's super dope, especially if you were in a position to do so. You know, and he's also part of a more progressive league where you have an owner who, not an owner, a commissioner who also supports his players in their beliefs and what they say. So
yeah,
you know,
that's true. That's good perspective. That's real. I see what you saying there.
Yeah, shout out to him.
Yeah. And we gotta, you know, we can't expect everybody to handle every situation in which, you know, in a manner of which we would, you know what I'm saying? That's not fair.
People don't care. And to be honest, I'd rather them not say something than say something stupid. So like, if we remember like in the beginning too, LeBron would say that all the time. Like he wasn't always this way. It was after he did some research and educated himself. But in the beginning, they asking him and he'd be like, I remember one time he said like, I don't know about that stuff. Like I'm not.
I know, like I'm originally from Cleveland, and I was mad as hell when in our own backyard in Cleveland, Ohio, Tamir Rice was shot and killed by the police, and Brian said nothing. Like, Brian, you play for Cleveland. How you not speak on this? And he still.
And I think wasn't that kind of like when he started to shift, because I think it was that situation. One of the situations that happened, he had said like, I don't know anything about that, so I'd rather not talk on it because I'm not.
It might have was that situation. I know he was kind of vocal with the "I can't breathe" and
right, because that's when he started to shift and was like, "Oh, let me actually do some reading, like,
that's
check and see what these people are talking about."
Yeah, it takes everybody time too. You know, everybody work on their own schedules. All right. So a few more questions here. I wanted to talk about social media and the impact that it's had on the sports business in particular. Like a person like yourself who's in business for herself, do you feel as though, so like I came out of undergrad in 2010 and I can remember just like the bright lights. I just wanted, it had to be ESPN or die, like, or CBS or something crazy. Like I was a CBS page and like I worked for CBS Sports Network for some time. And like, as back then, I felt like it was way different. You chase the big companies, whereas I'm not coming out of college now. I don't know if they have that same mindset, but I do know that a lot has changed. It's so easy to create a brand for yourself these days. Do you feel as though that has changed the whole perspective in terms of well, I don't necessarily need ESPN, or if ESPN is the ultimate goal, I can create my own brand and make ESPN come to me. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
So let's
I'll
just
be careful with that too. ESPN don't really need to come to nobody, but
that's real. Well, ESPN did seek out Nick Wright, though.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. That's true.
So yeah, just how social media has changed the whole seeking a job.
Yeah, I think number one, it depends on what you want to do. So obviously, like if you want to be in front of the camera, if you want to be a anchor or producer or on that side of the business, um, it definitely doesn't hurt to do your own thing in the beginning and to like really, I mean, that's pretty much what you have to do nowadays anyway. I'm not in the production world, but from family and people that I know who do work in that space, like you kind of have to already establish yourself as like an expert before you even try to get in. So it definitely helps. But on your traditional business side, so like business development, advertising, all that stuff, it really comes down to doing your research. So, a lot of the times when I talk to my students, they will say, to your point, it's like ESPN or die, or like I need to work for the NBA. And a lot of them don't even know what that means. So I think it's more so an awareness thing. I'm sure you were like me when you graduated from college, that you didn't even know the breadth of the types of jobs that there were in the sports industry.
Girl, I'm still learning, like, oh, that's a real thing.
Like you didn't know the types of companies that there were in this industry. So I always tell them to do research. That's why when we work with our college students for MIS, we expose them to different companies. So we'll take them on office visits. Well, they'll go visit a company like, an Endeavor, or or on the agency side, where it's not like your traditional sports agent in terms of like, contract negotiation stuff, but it's like, no, there is a person here who looks like you, who works with some of your favorite athletes on all his off the court stuff, on his actual brand, and gets paid a good amount of money to do it, a company that you didn't even know existed. So I don't necessarily like to always kind of push people away from some of those bigger companies, because we do need to be in those spaces too. But I definitely do encourage them to, kind of be open to different opportunities. And that's why we try our hardest to expose them to different companies outside of just, we'll take them to the leagues too. We'll take them to like your Nikes and your ESPNs, but we definitely try to expose them to some other companies so they can see the breadth of jobs. Because when you think about like the bigger companies, like those are going to be the companies where you're pigeonholed at. Like, you go to a major network who's been number one for the past 40 years, like there's not a lot of room to move around there, because they're successful, because they're a well-oiled machine. So if you come in as a coordinator in this role, like most likely that's all you're going to be doing for the next 2 to 3 years. Whereas like if you go into, a less traditional company, a newer company or something, like you may be able to come in and kind of dip your toes into 2 or 3 different things, and really learn and grow outside of just like staying at your coordinator level role. You might get more responsibility at a smaller company. So, I think it's really just about doing your research, trying to figure out what you want to do. And definitely, that working part too. So you can learn what a company is like from the inside out, and not just the glitz and glam of what you think a company is.
I think that's important. And then, you know what, that kind of answers what was going to be my next question. I was just going to ask you, you know, what's some advice or suggestions you would give for the person that's listening to this podcast that, you know, maybe is a recent college graduate or, you know, or early professional, or even somebody 30, 40 something that's, you know, looking to make a career change to want to get into sports business. But I guess you could say it's research, huh?
Research and networking, as cliche as that sounds. Like, you know, and don't, even with networking, I always say don't network just to network. Don't be one of those people who just like, I'm a fine VP of company X. You know, call them up to pick their brain.
Isn't that like, so let's talk a little bit about that though. The whole concept of networking, and people feel as though, you know, I hear this term all the time, you know, you want to make sure you're adding value.
Right.
So for somebody that's fresh out of school and they like, you know, well, does that mean I need to leverage my skills? Or the cold email that you send in, obviously you don't want to send the VP or whatever, but it's like this whole thing. And I've been guilty of doing it before. Like,
yeah, we all have.
Hi, I was wondering if I can take you out for coffee and possibly pick your brain. How do you do networking effectively and appropriately?
I would say first thing is don't, to my earlier point, don't necessarily try to get the highest person in the room.
Right.
I mean, sometimes it's better to network laterally across the board. So maybe talk to that person who's a coordinator, because that's the role you're going to be in next. You can get, you know, the VP is so far removed from your world, you know, and they get 500 people hitting them up for the same thing you hitting them up for. So, you know, we just worked with one of the leagues where they did a virtual mentor day, and the majority of the mentors that they chose for our college students were all like coordinator and a like early management role people.
Okay.
Our students, the feedback from our students were like, we had so much in common, and I was able to like really learn what it's like. So it's like, for that, to me, you can get a more realistic view. And I always tell my students too, like, you never know where your friends are going to be in 10 years or 5 years from now, and how they can help you. Like, I always talk about one of my really good friends that we started in this industry together. You know, I was interning. He was like his first year working for a team, and like he helped me get one of my first jobs in the league. And now he's very senior at one of the leagues. And to this day, like, we kind of play off each other, where, you know, if I need something or if I'm interested in doing something with that particular league, like, he's able to help me get that done. So
That's
it's
important.
like, you know, but we've also known each other for, I would say, what, like 11 years now. So it's like we really built that relationship and we built that trust. Not just like some, you know, EVP that I met 10 years ago, almost like 1,000 other people who were also trying to get into the industry. So I think it's important to have both. As a younger person, I would definitely say try to focus more on some of the lower level people, because you'd be surprised how much they can help you. And they're actually going to remember you. So when it comes down to, you know, vouching for you or getting your foot in the door, you know, they can pass a resume too.
Yeah, I think that's important. No, it's exactly what you just said. I think that a lot of times people can be guilty of overlooking, you know, what's right in front of them. And it's so important to network amongst your peers, you know, and then, you know, you guys can grow together. You know, like you said, you never know what somebody's going to be 10 years from now, 15 years from now. And if you nourish those relationships.
And even like when you go on interviews too, like I always say, if you are being interviewed by someone and they have an assistant, like, email that assistant thank you for setting up the meeting, because you don't know the conversations that that person is having with that assistant afterwards. Because, you know, they may bring them in to be like, okay, what were your thoughts on those people? How were they like when they were sitting out there waiting to come in for the interview? What was their interaction with you? Like, you never know. And it could be that person's, you know, quick memory of you that can push you over. Yeah, that can push you over other candidates. So, you know, that's definitely something that I always tend to do is, you know, I'll always send a thank you to an assistant, whoever coordinated the interview, whatever HR person, even if that HR person, you know, seems insignificant because it's like, oh, they already set up the interview, so you know we don't really need them anymore. You know, I always tend to check in and be like, hey, just want to let you know how that interview went, and thanks again for setting it up and giving me some tips and advice on how to, you know, navigate that. So
no, I think that's good. I think the pull away gem for that is, you know, overlook no one. Everyone is somebody. You know, be nice to everyone, and you know,
right.
I think that's important. Okay, we just under an hour here, so I'm gonna wrap up. I do want to know though, where can people? Well, I know you got a couple things coming up. I know you got the virtual happy hour coming up for MIS, and the micro master class for people that's interested in MIS and getting involved. What should they do?
Definitely you check us out on our social. That is where we have that's where we kind of post everything, especially our Instagram and Twitter pages.
Okay.
So that's where we have the majority of our stuff. Most of our events are pretty much open to everyone. The happy hours are unfortunately closed to people who work in the industry, just because we want to just kind of keep, you know, some normalcy to that in terms of like making sure that we have people who are informed on the industry, quite frankly, who can speak to it. But other than that, like our master classes, that is open to any and everybody. We all got to learn how to negotiate and get the bag and get, you know, some awesome packages that are out there that we have no idea what they look like. Because, you know, a lot of us don't come from parents who had $500,000 packages from their job. You know what I mean? So it's like, that's open to everybody. We're doing a free IG Live workout next week, Thursday. One of our members, Gerda Gatling, is going to be doing that. She, I think, is a referee within the NCAA system.
That's dope.
Part-time, but she's also just a really dope athlete. Her workouts, she's killing it out here. So she'll be hosting that free. All you got to do is go to our IG Live next week, Thursday at 6:00.
Okay.
And then we should be doing the Master Series throughout May and June.
Okay.
And like I said, those are open to any and everyone. I think those can go across the industry. You know, like if we're doing one on sponsorships, like you don't necessarily need to work in sports to learn good tools for sponsorships. Like if you work in media, you should know good tools in sponsorships or marketing, whatever.
That's a fact.
Yeah. So
what's the I'm gonna put it in the show notes, of course, but what's the handle for your social medias?
At MI Sports Biz. So like M for minority, I in sports, and BIZ.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. Well, this was great. You got any last things you want to say? Tell us what you into or anything you want to add?
No, I'm good.
No, you good? All right. Well, this has been great. I appreciate you for being a guest on our episode number 2. And this is for the Culture Podcast. She is Shaina Wiel. Thanks. Peace and love.
Thank you.